Story 1. My parents no longer tell me what to do. Instead, I am directed by my employer, my spouse, and the government. Story 2. My childhood was lonely. My teenage years were lonely. My adult life is 10 times lonelier. Nothing seems to have changed. Story 3. I experience significantly more anxiety now. I no longer wake up with a sense of wonder and excitement for the day. It's quite depressing. Story 4. Life keeps getting better with each passing year. Soon to be 40, and I feel my life is still not at its peak. It just keeps improving. I have gained more experience, relationship knowledge, self-awareness, financial stability, and a sense of security and contentment. I no longer have to deal with negativity. I have cut out or reduced contact with unpleasant family members. I don't care what people think, and I embrace my body and feel comfortable. Every single aspect of life improves with age, in my opinion. Teenage years were difficult. You lack experience, resources, and money. You're dependent on the whims of others and family, filled with insecurity and worry about the future. It was challenging all around. Story 5. I have many more friends now, and life is actually fun. I also worry much less than I did in the past, but I guess that is what happens when you get older and stop caring about what others think of you. Story 6. Worlds apart. I wish I could tell that little hopeless boy that it is going to be okay and that the people around him are wrong. Story 7. I miss having friends and going on adventures, but my 30s aren't too bad. I feel like my mental state has improved drastically with age. Story 8. Being a teenager was exhausting with all the drama about who said what and wearing the right clothes. These days, I couldn't care less what people think. Plus, I can buy cake whenever I want, and no one can tell me not to. Story 9. It's similar in a way. I still feel a lot of pressure. The only difference is that I have money now. Story 10. I joke that I managed to achieve the middle-class lifestyle I had as a teenager with my own money, so I returned to simpler times. Story 11. Having grown up on the spectrum, I can say that I interact with people better now and have friends I truly consider close. I also live on my own and can write down my ideas for stories using the knowledge I have gained. However, I miss the optimism of being at the beginning of life when many opportunities are still possible. It's different when you reach middle age. Story 12. Honestly, it's very similar. I was an independent kid, so not much changed when I moved out. The biggest difference is that everything used to feel like the end of the world, but now I just think, it's not that serious. As I go through life. Story 13. Much better. The only memorable aspects of my teenage years were the games, shows, and movies. Other than that, my high school years were unremarkable. Between the ages of 18 and 21, I was treated like a child by my very conservative father and stepmother. I was not allowed to have a girlfriend or hang out with friends. I joined the army when I turned 21 and went to live with my biological mother after returning from training. From that point, my life truly began, and everything I own and the friendships I made were built from the ground up. Story 14. I am a broke college student working at GameStop on weekends. My friends are getting married, my classmates are graduating, and I am merely existing. Overall, it is a pretty solid experience. Story 15. Leagues better. Teenage me thought I would be dead by now. Life is peaceful. It gets better. You have to want it and work for it. You must persist through difficult times and make hard decisions. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Story 16. I am 19, still a teenager. Life is great now that I am in university. Life is a little easier. Story 17. As a teenager, I had a lot of hope and optimism for the future, based on many presumptions and misguided beliefs. Those were the days. After roughly 20 years of deepening depression, experiencing my world collapse, enduring soul-draining menial labor under insecure, petty bosses, and losing faith and hope for my future and that of humanity, it has been quite difficult to handle. Here's to decades more of the same. Story 18. To Zen throwaway. My early teenage years were much better than my childhood because I finally started to get some of the ridiculous Pentecostal religion out of my life. I finally got tired of being made fun of. So I wore shorts and pants that my grandmother had bought for me under my skirts to go to school. I had my grandmother cut my hair for me. I felt no reason my hair should always be my covering. I have had migraines since childhood, so I really needed some weight taken off my head. I liked my late teenage years, started having friends, met the man who would eventually be my son's father, and finally let my mom see me in pants. She was really upset about it, but she got over it. Later on, after everyone started dying, she began talking about heaven, so that stood out as a good time to let her know I had never really believed. I had prayed in the past, but nothing ever came of it. She said she had no daughter. Later, she said it wasn't that bad and that she still loved me no matter what. I miss her a lot. I am glad I was a teenager in the 90s and graduated high school in 1999. There will never be another phenomenal strain of music such as the one in the 90s. The same can be said about the 60s. Story 19, difficult but still better. I am much happier with myself, which is something I struggled with for so long. My life isn't exactly where I want it to be, but it is okay. I will get there eventually. My teenage years were not enjoyable at all, and I am really happy I will never have to live through them again. Story 20. I was dedicated to my studies for 16 hours a day and didn't have any social skills, let alone a social life or interesting hobbies aside from movies and reading. Every friendship I made in school was transactional. After we graduated high school and went our separate ways, we immediately stopped keeping in touch because we could no longer benefit academically from each other. I always admired the things I wanted to do from afar and the people who did them, but I was too anxious to try them. As an adult, even though I can't say that I'm entirely happy with my current career, I can happily say that I have come a long way from that anxious teenager. I took up the hobbies I had wanted to pursue for a long time. I have traveled solo in a foreign country several times. I made genuine friends with similar interests, and living apart from my toxic parent has greatly improved my self-confidence and mental health. In summary, independence, both financial and emotional, has made my adulthood significantly better than my teenage years. Story 21. I went from extreme depression and severe obsessive-compulsive disorder, surviving grooming, conversion therapy, and family abuse to loving life, creating art, and being happily married. Story 22. I have grown a lot emotionally. I have improved significantly with dating and romance, and my friends now include both men and women. I still have many great male friends, but I also have many wonderful female friends. I grew up in a very conservative part of Iowa and went through a nice guy phase. Moving to a different state made a big difference. I have noticed that many of my more conservative friends who embraced certain ideologies now struggle to maintain relationships and often spend their time complaining to other men about women, blaming the entire gender for their unhappiness. Seriously, people, get more variety in the individuals you surround yourself with. Story 23. I miss being carefree, but it felt restrictive being told what to do. It's nice to make my own money and spend it as I see fit. Story 24. I lived in a 4-room apartment by myself comfortably from 18 to 28. Now I need to have 2 roommates or move if I want to live on my own. Instead, I split a mortgage with my parents so the 3 of us don't have to move to an undesirable state just to afford housing. Story 25. I had many terrible friends and a select few actual good ones. The last 3 I had were my best, and those relationships ended as soon as the pandemic hit. Story 26. Things I like better now and things that were better then. Now I'm more confident and have money to do things. But at the same time, there are always those lingering thoughts of, did I pay this bill? What if my car breaks down and I can't make it to work? And similar concerns that most adults go through. As a teenager and in my early 20s, though, I miss being ignorant and more carefree. It was nice to stay up late without any real obligations. Even when I worked part-time during my late teens and early 20s, multiple nights a week I would meet up with friends, party in the woods, or hang out in my parents' garage, drinking and blasting music. One euphoric nostalgic memory I have is when I was about 19 or 20, and a group of friends and I tried to get a band together. The bassist's uncle owned a business and had a property on the mountain just outside of town. He let us use the garage up there to practice. Since there were no houses and only woods around us, we could play as loud as we wanted at any time of the day. One night, after playing until about 3 a.m., we decided to hook up some music through a speaker, drink, and hang out. I remember being buzzed and looking out at the lights in town below us, which gave me goosebumps. It kind of reminded me of the scenery of those houses on the mountain in Los Angeles overlooking the skyline. Memories like that make me miss my youthful mentality back then. Story 27. The same as in my teenage years, I still believe in fairy tales and continue making music. I am usually inside the house, but sometimes I go to the kitchen to eat snacks. I would say it is perfected now. I am 41. Story 28. Everyone in the comments seems so cynical. My adulthood just started. I turned 18 a few months ago. I'm happy because back in primary and secondary school, I was bullied a lot, had few friends, and was struggling with my mental health. Fast forward to now, and I am in college with a wonderful group of friends and achieving good grades. Story 29. My adulthood is challenging because I have no money and live with my in-laws, but I accept it as a significant improvement from my teenage years. During my teenage years, I had no life, no money, and struggled with my identity. I worked constantly and gave my parents all my earnings to cover rent and groceries that I wasn't allowed to eat, as well as repaying them for raising me. I often contemplated escaping from life. I used to daydream about it frequently, a habit that began when I was 6. I have many missing memories due to past trauma, but daydreaming remained a constant. I was barely surviving in my teens. Although I may be broke and dependent on my in-laws for food, I haven't thought about ending my life in years. We don't always get along well, but I appreciate them for saving me from the difficult home life I experienced before. Story 30, oddly similar. In my teens, I spent a lot of time drawing, reading, playing video games, and working on my 1972 Volkswagen Beetle or 1996 Jeep Cherokee. In my 30s, I spent a lot of time drawing, reading, playing video games, and working on my 1988 Mustang or 2021 Tacoma. The vehicles changed, but the hobbies didn't. The drawing is now a source of income. Story 31. All the trauma I experienced before is finally taking a toll on me now, so yes, everything is fine. Story 32. I am still caught in the same cycle of social anxiety, but at least I no longer have an eating disorder. Story 33. The years from 13 to 18 were the worst years of my life. I am much happier as an adult. I disregard anyone who claimed that high school would be the best years of my life. Story 34. Still broke, still in pain, still fighting the good fight. It is nice to have my own place now to hide from the world. Story 35. Sometimes I feel a great deal of nostalgia for my younger years. When you are an adult, so much of your life revolves around work and surviving. I think someone once put it like this: when you are a child, you have all the time but no freedom. When you are an adult, you have all the freedom but no time. When you are elderly, you have the time and freedom, but are too old and sick to enjoy it. Story 36. Fewer people instruct me on what to do. More people financially support me if I follow their guidance. It's not bad. Story 37. Rough start, but the current season is going great. Seasons of adulthood 1 to 6 were difficult, filled with drama, trauma, and subplots that should not have been as significant as they were. A few times, the seasons almost ended abruptly, but luckily I pulled through. Seasons 7 to 12 have been amazing, with a lot of healing, growth, and self-love. I have been traveling and seeing many new things, meeting wonderful people, and finding my chosen family while cutting out the loose ends from the previous seasons that kept reappearing and trying to disrupt my peaceful time. Story 38. I'm a hardworking individual. However, I feel older and have less energy than before. Regarding work, I am not as naive as I once was. Let's go. Story 39. I had significant anxiety as a teenager and during college because I felt that people did not like me, and I tried too hard to please everyone. I stressed myself out over individuals who did not care about me. Eventually, I overcame this feeling, and now I focus on doing my own thing without worrying about what others think. Story 40. I went from being social and outgoing to a lonely hermit. I guess all the trauma caused by sick and toxic people might have something to do with it. Story 41. I am much better. I feel happy and healthy, have more money, and have had time to process and address my traumas. Story 42. When I'm feeling depressed, I used to self-harm, but now I can buy a whole tub of ice cream, and later I'll feel better. That's why I gained some weight. Story 43. I believe that adulthood brings greater freedom and responsibility, while the teenage years are focused on exploration and growth. Story 44. People annoy me more. I am much more attracted to personality than body type or sexual interests. I learned that my parents were right the whole time, thanked them, and apologized around the age of 22. My mom will always be the strongest woman I know. You really cannot trust anyone completely. Story 45. Apples and oranges. My teenage years were a time when I was discovering the world and felt invincible. Now, almost 40, I have experienced an early midlife crisis and am adjusting to the fact that I'm not young anymore. However, I am still young enough to enjoy life while in good health and remain vital and strong. I no longer have the same naivety I had as a teenager, and I wouldn't want to be a teenager again. Story 46. I wish I had the wisdom I gained in my teens and the innocence and enthusiasm to embrace new experiences as an adult. Story 47. More money can bring fulfillment, but it often leads to less everyday happiness. The loss of innocence and optimism is real and deeply sad. Story 48. I have a collection of mental and physical health problems now that I didn't have before. However, it is still much better. Story 49. I struggled with anorexia and suicidal thoughts during my teenage years. Now at 42, I have been fully recovered from anorexia since 2021, and I am genuinely happy. I have a wonderful spouse, a good job, and many great friends, allowing me the freedom to live my life as I choose. One of the best aspects of being an adult is that I can choose how often to see my mother, which usually amounts to 2 to 4 times a year. Story 50. I have significantly more money, freedom, and material possessions. However, I also have increased responsibilities, including a child and a wife. The daily grind can be exhausting. Story 51. In my teenage years, I was often left unattended for weeks at a time. I made my own fun and rationed food to last the whole week or until my dad said he would be back. I didn't do much or go anywhere since I was new to the area. Once I started high school, it went from being lonely to being harassed, and eventually I was accepted into the community. I became a latchkey kid who hung out with my friends all the time. As an adult, I have a wife and a job, both of which I enjoy. I can buy my own food when I want, spend time with whomever I choose, and I do not have to rely on anyone. I also have 2 adorable cats. Story 52. More responsibility, less time for yourself, more money but less time to spend and enjoy it, and less inclination to start something new as you yearn to maintain old habits. Feels more tiresome and painful. Story 53. In my teenage years, I played guitar in a band, hung out with my friends, and had plenty of free time. In adulthood, I barely play guitar now. I am married, and my friends from my teenage years haven't spoken to me since I was 20. I am 34 now. I use my free time to watch Netflix with my wife. Story 54. I feel a bit lonelier, but significantly less anxious and distressed. I find myself happier and enjoy more freedom. However, I am also much less forgiving of mistreatment. Story 55. I experienced depression, self-harm, suicidal thoughts, and bulimia during my teenage years. Last year, I suffered a mental breakdown followed by 2 suicide attempts, and I ended up in an inpatient facility. Am I doing better than in the past? Absolutely not. Story 56. I enjoyed my teenage years for the most part and would have enjoyed them even more had I been less of a typical angsty teenager. You don't realize this until you are older and have a bit more perspective on things. I would rate my adulthood as better. I have a few medical issues, but they are manageable. I have learned how important it is to have real-world relationships, so I have worked on fostering them, and for the most part, they are good too. I made it a point to show up for work and put in enough effort to get something done. It is important to try to maintain a stable position on any list. In summary, my teenage years weren't bad, but my adulthood is better. Story 57. I had no money as a teenager, but the world was full of possibilities. Now, as an adult, I have no money and no possibilities. Story 58, way better in every way, honestly. Being at the mercy of narcissists with substance abuse problems is far worse than anything in adulthood. I am in my mid to late 30s, and I've never been happier. My wife and I have faced health scares, financial troubles, and typical bad luck. None of it compares to being under the control of truly manipulative alcoholics. I rarely reminisce about the past. It wasn't so good. I'm always surprised when people say they had fewer worries as kids. I do not feel that way. Story 59. When I was a teenager, I used to smoke marijuana and dreamed of the day I could leave my parents' house. I regret to say that was actually a brighter time in my life than the last 10 years have been. Story 60. My teenage years were challenging, as I came from a violently abusive home. Now I return home to the love of my dogs. I have traveled and bought and sold a couple of homes. I owned a sports car, a large truck, and participated in a variety of hobbies. While I was involved in scouting and engaged in numerous activities, they were not things I truly wanted to do. I had nothing better to occupy my time, but they helped get me out of the house. Story 61. Strangely, I have more social anxiety. I used to have no fear and could strike up a conversation with anyone. Now I'm scared to run errands by myself. Story 62. I'm surprisingly content. I was more depressed during my teenage years and desperate for a girlfriend. Now I have various hobbies, enjoy my time doing different things, want to do more with life even under these difficult economic circumstances, and am finding myself. I'm 26 years old and have finally decided on a career in human resources. Things feel hopeless sometimes, but I feel like that's true for everyone at some point. I still don't have a girlfriend, but that's because I know what I want and what I can't handle. I'm not even picky about it, surprisingly. Now for the cons. My back hurts. My stomach hurts. My knees hurt. My strong stomach is gone, so I have to be careful about what I eat. I'm going to the gym more, and it helps a lot, but I'm now stuck in a routine. Last but not least, most people are frustrating. Not everyone, but most. We live in a society. Story 63. There is no optimism. The world feels difficult right now. I try to engage with nostalgic content because I want to recapture the feelings I had as a teenager. But it never truly returns. Story 64. Growing up, I assumed it was the fact that I could live by my own rules. While that is mostly true, I noticed I don't have to deal with as many difficult people because those individuals tend to be weeded out after high school. Story 65. Comfortable, safe, and consistent. Can be boring at times, but it's a good kind of boring because nothing bad is happening. All my needs are met. I have the time, energy, and resources to seek things that make life interesting instead of constantly dealing with external stressors. I feel comfortable and secure in my place in the world. I am confident that I can provide for myself now and in the future, and I don't have to worry about anyone harming me or taking that away. This is great. Story 66. Anyone who believes that being a teenager is the best time of life is simply misguided and may have peaked in high school. As much as adulting can be challenging, I still prefer it over those experiences. I get to live my life. It's tough being older, things are falling apart, but that's inevitable. I just have to keep going. Story 67. I have more debt and still live at home with my mom, but I am 75% self-sufficient as I pay rent, the internet bill, buy my own groceries, and cook. Honestly, if I had no debts, I would be living entirely on my own. Additionally, my health is overall better than it was, and I am working towards a healthier weight now compared to when I was younger. Story 68. I just turned 18 a few days ago, and every time I think about what I will do with my life, it becomes overwhelming. I used to be happy in the past. Story 69. I'm much happier now that I have control I didn't have while living with my parents. That freedom outweighs all the negatives. Story 70. Much better. I'm not alone, and I don't have to walk the halls of school and eat cafeteria food every day. Story 71. I was scammed when I was a kid. I thought I would earn $50,000 a month and have $500,000 after 10 months. No one corrected me. Story 72. I feel much better about my body image, but everything else seems worse, whether it's my career or life in general. I have become quite withdrawn and have started distancing myself from my friends, thinking that they will leave me anyway. Story 73, far better. Giving my children the childhood they deserve and not abandoning them like I was abandoned is very rewarding. Reliving my childhood and enjoying life through their happiness is wonderful. Story 74, better in every possible way. I went from living in a tiny, religious, conservative, and poor town to living in a city. When I came out in college, I went back there once, and a neighbor I had known all my life who had helped me out on countless occasions told me that if he saw me around his property, he would put a bullet in me. I had my uncle try to strangle me while my dad watched and laughed and was told to leave and never come back, all in a 6-hour period. Life is much better now, and I have been able to get my mom and some siblings out of that situation. Story 75. I finally received the right treatment for a lifetime of mental illness in my early 30s. I am still working on a lifetime of recovery, but I am mostly doing well now. Story 76. I am feeling more depressed, stressed, disappointed, and anxious. I have less time, I am less physically fit, and I have fewer friends. However, my life is still much better than it was during my teenage years. Story 77. My teenage years were difficult due to social anxiety, undiagnosed attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, obsessive-compulsive disorder, extreme negative self-talk, and the general lack of autonomy that comes with not having money or purpose. Adulthood has its challenges, but being a teenager was particularly tough. Story 78. I have accepted that I have mental health challenges and have started working on improving my mind and body. My younger self would be very proud. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.